Long ago, in the heart of a wide and fertile land, there lay a village called Green River. The people who lived there were farmers, hunters, and traders. They worked hard, and their lives were made possible by a wide, flowing river that cut through the middle of the village. This river provided everything: water for their farms, water for cooking, water for drinking, and even water for washing their bodies after long days of work. Without the river, Green River would have been nothing but a dry land. The people of Green River lived with one rule taught by their elders: water is life, and life must be shared. From childhood, every boy and girl was taught to pour a little water on the ground before drinking, as a way of thanking the spirits of the river. This was not just a ritual, it was a lesson that water belonged to all. But among these villagers was a young woman who carried beauty like the rising sun but also pride like a mountain. Her name was Grace. She walked with her head high, her face always polished, and her clothes finer than anyone else's. She spoke only when she wanted, and she gave nothing unless it served her. And though she lived in a village where sharing water was a way of life, Grace refused to share even a single drop. Grace was the only daughter of her mother, Clara, who loved her deeply. Clara was a simple woman who often fetched water for the old and weak, always smiling as she did so. But Grace was the opposite. She carried water only for herself, and whenever children or old people begged her for a little, she would laugh and walk away. "Why should I share what belongs to me?" Grace often said. "I fetched this water myself. Let everyone do the same." The villagers shook their heads at her words, whispering among themselves. "A heart that refuses to share will one day dry up," they would say. But Grace ignored them. As she grew older, her beauty attracted many young men who wanted her hand in marriage. But even then, her pride was sharp. She mocked the poor, insulted the humble, and never once carried food or water to the needy. Many suitors left, whispering, "She may be beautiful, but her heart is bitter." Still, Grace did not care. She believed she was above everyone else in Green River. One hot morning, something strange happened. The sun rose with a fierceness that the villagers had never seen before. The sky, usually full of clouds during the farming season, stood bare and empty. Day after day, the sun burned, and soon the farms began to dry. The leaves turned brown, the soil cracked, and even the air seemed to hold no mercy. The villagers, frightened, turned to their beloved river. But even there, something unusual was happening. The water level, once high and full, began to drop. Fish gasped near the surface, and the current slowed until the once roaring river became a weak stream. The elders called for prayers, sacrifices, and dances by the riverbank, but still, the waters continued to fall. By the seventh day, Green River faced the beginning of a true drought. And though every family struggled to save what little water they had, one person was never worried: Grace. For she had her calabash filled, and in her heart, she swore she would not share a single drop with anyone. On the 9th day of the drought, an old woman named Martha came to Grace's hut. Martha's lips were cracked, her steps weak, and her voice faint. She carried a dry clay pot, hoping Grace would fill it with just a little water. "My daughter," Martha whispered, "I beg you, share a little water with me. My grandchildren are thirsty, and the river is dry." Grace looked at her coldly. She touched her smooth skin and said with a sneer, "Did I tell you not to fetch water when the river was full? Why should I waste my own water on you now?" Martha fell on her knees, her frail hands trembling as she pleaded. But Grace stepped back and slammed her door. The sound echoed in the village, and all who heard it shook their heads in sadness. That night, Martha lay weak on her bed, whispering, "The river watches, the river listens." But Grace slept with no worry, her pot of water shining under the moonlight. The next evening, the griot of the village, an old storyteller named David, gathered the people under the ancient Iroko tree. He told them of the spirit of the river, how they gave life to the land but punished those who hoarded water. His voice carried deep into the night, filled with warnings. There was once a man who refused to share water during a famine, David said. The river dried his throat, and he was never seen again. There was once a woman who mocked the thirsty, the river swallowed her, and her name was forgotten. The villagers nodded, frightened by the tale. All of them turned to look at Grace's hut, for everyone knew she was the only one who never shared. David raised his hand and said, "Beware, for the river has ears. It does not forgive greed." Grace, listening from her window, laughed softly. "Old stories for children," she muttered. She took a long sip from her calabash and poured the rest into her bath, letting the precious water run down her skin. One morning, as Grace walked near the forest edge, she stumbled upon something unexpected. Beneath the roots of an ancient tree, she saw a small spring bubbling softly. She looked around, no one was near. With greed in her heart, she fetched water from it quickly, covering the spot with leaves to hide it from others. "This will be my secret," she whispered. "While the rest of the village thirsts, I will always have water." She laughed, imagining the villagers begging while she drank in comfort. She carried her pots home, filling her jars until her hut was stacked with water. Day after day, Grace returned to the spring in secret. And while the villagers struggled, lining up at the riverbed for drops, Grace's pots were always full. She shared nothing, not even with her own mother. Clara grew worried, whispering, "My daughter, water is not meant to be hidden." But Grace silenced her with anger. "Keep quiet, mother. This is mine." Then, on the 14th day, something dreadful happened. The river that had always flowed, even during dry seasons, suddenly stopped. The villagers gathered at its banks in shock. Children cried, women wailed, and men shook their heads in fear. The riverbed was nothing but cracked mud and dying fish. The elders beat drums, calling to the spirits, but no answer came. The griot whispered, "The river has been offended." Panic filled Green River, for now, even the little that remained was gone. Yet, strangely, near Grace's hut, her hidden pots were still filled with water. Her secret well had not dried. Soon, whispers spread through the village. "How does Grace still have water?" they asked one another. "What has she done?" Some suspected witchcraft, others believed the spirits had favored her. But no one dared confront her yet. Grace, meanwhile, walked proudly, carrying her full calabash past the thirsty villagers with a smirk on her lips. By the 17th day, the people of Green River could no longer hide their anger. Groups of children and mothers stood by Grace's hut, watching as she carried water to wash her face while their lips cracked from thirst. Men grumbled, fists clenched, but the elders held them back, warning against violence. "Grace," one man called, "share at least a little water with the children." But Grace only shook her head. "Did you not hear the griot stories? If the river punishes the greedy, then why do I still have water? Maybe I am blessed, and you are cursed." Her words spread through the village like fire, burning hearts with both envy and hatred. That night, mothers held their children close, whispering prayers. Fathers sharpened hoes and cutlasses, murmuring of forcing Grace to share. But the elders said, "Let us wait. The river spirit is not blind." Grace, lying in her hut, drank deeply and smiled. She believed she had won. The next morning, a group of children approached Grace's hut. Their lips were white with dryness, and their eyes were weak. One boy, Samuel, barely 7 years old, fell at her feet. "Sister Grace," he begged, "please give us just a little. My baby sister cannot cry anymore. She is too weak." Grace looked at the children coldly. "Go to your mothers. I am not the river." The children did not move. They sat at her doorstep, too weak to walk away. Angry, Grace poured water onto the ground in front of them, saying, "If you are thirsty, drink from the dust." The children wailed as the precious water sank into the soil. The whole village heard and trembled. Mothers cursed, fathers clenched their fists, but still, the elders stopped them. The river spirit will answer, they repeated. Wait and see. Grace returned inside her hut, satisfied. Yet that night, when the wind blew, she heard faint whispers, water is life, and life must be shared. That night, Grace had a dream unlike any other. She found herself standing by the dry riverbed, but the earth shook, and from the dust rose a tall woman dressed in flowing blue cloth that shimmered like water. Her eyes shone like the moon, and her voice was like rushing waves. Grace, the woman said, you have taken what is not yours. You have hidden water, mocked the thirsty, and refused to share. Do you not know water is a gift for all? Grace trembled in the dream but tried to speak boldly. The water I found is mine. I worked for it. But the woman's eyes darkened. You are foolish. The river has washed your pride, your cruelty, your greed. If you do not change, you will learn that water can vanish even from your hands. Before Grace could answer, the woman raised her hand, and the pot in Grace's hut shattered in her dream, spilling water onto the ground. Grace woke with a start, sweat pouring down her face. But when she checked her pots, they were still full. Smiling, she said, it was only a dream, and went back to sleep. The following morning, Grace carried her calabash to fetch more from her secret well. But as she dipped it, the calabash cracked in her hands, spilling everything. She fetched another, but it too broke. By the third attempt, Grace grew afraid. She returned home quickly, whispering, it was just an accident. But as she placed her pots in her hut, one after another began to break. The sound of clay shattering echoed, and soon half her water was gone. Grace screamed, trying to save what remained, but it was no use. Her mother, Clara, entered and said, my daughter, the spirits are warning you. Share what you have before it is all gone. Still, Grace refused. No. I will never share. Let them all suffer. Her words pierced her mother's heart, and Clara wept for the daughter whose pride was greater than her compassion. By the 20th day, the elders of Green River could wait no longer. They called a council under the Iroko tree. Men and women gathered, their faces weary, their bodies weak from thirst. The griot told Grace's story to the crowd, and all agreed that something had to be done. Grace has brought shame on us, one elder said. She mocks the thirsty while we suffer. Another added, if she will not share, then she must leave. The crowd murmured, but Clara begged, please, she is still my daughter. The elders shook their heads. She has chosen her own path. If the spirits are against her, who are we to protect her? They decided to send a final messenger to Grace, begging her one last time. If she refused, the village would turn its back on her. When Grace heard the decision, she laughed. Let them all die of thirst. I will never bow to them. That evening, as the sun burned red, a stranger arrived at the village. He wore dusty clothes and leaned on a staff, his face hidden by a wide hat. He walked slowly, as if he had traveled far. The villagers watched him curiously, too weak to greet him properly. He stopped at Grace's hut and knocked. Grace opened the door, frowning. Who are you? She demanded. The stranger spoke softly, I am a traveler. I beg you, give me a little water, for my throat is dry. Grace laughed cruelly. Do you not see the river is gone? Who told you I have water? Even if I did, why should I waste it on you? The stranger looked at her calmly, his eyes shining beneath the hat. Because sometimes the one you refuse may be more than he appears. But Grace spat on the ground. Get away from my door, beggar, she shouted, slamming it shut. The moment the door closed, the stranger removed his hat, and the villagers gasped. His face glowed like the moon, his eyes flowed like water, and his clothes shimmered with blue light. He rose taller than the Iroko tree, his voice thundering like waves. I am the river spirit, the giver of life to Green River. I came to test this woman's heart, but she has failed. The villagers fell to their knees, trembling with fear. The river spirit pointed at Grace's hut. Because she refused to share, because she mocked the thirsty, because she poured water on the ground before children, she shall learn what it means to live without water. Grace's hut shook, her pots shattered, and every drop of water vanished into dust. Grace screamed, running outside, but the river spirit turned his eyes on her. From this day, the river shall never flow for you. Wherever you go, water will turn away. Then he disappeared in a flash of blue light, leaving the village in silence. The next morning, the villagers gathered their belongings. We cannot stay here, they said. The river has abandoned us because of Grace. We must find a new land where water still flows. Mothers carried babies, fathers carried bundles, and the griot led the way with chants and songs. Clara begged them, "Do not leave my daughter behind." But the elders shook their heads. She has been cursed. If she comes with us, water will flee from us too. Tears streamed down Clara's face as the villagers began their journey. Grace, left behind, called after them. "Please, do not leave me." But no one answered. The dust of their footsteps rose, and soon she was alone in the empty village, surrounded by silence and cracked earth. Chapter 16. Grace alone. Days turned into nights, and nights into days. Grace wandered through the empty village, her throat dry, her lips cracked. She searched for her secret well, but it had dried completely. She ran to the riverbed, but it was nothing but dust. Even when she dug into the soil with her hands, no water came. She tried to leave the village, but every stream she found turned dry at her approach. Birds flew away from her, and even the dew on the leaves disappeared when she touched them. Truly, the curse was real. At night, she slept on the ground, listening to the silence. She remembered the faces of the children she had mocked, the cries of the mothers, the warnings of the griot. Her pride now felt like a heavy stone in her chest. For the first time in her life, she began to weep. One night, as she lay beneath the iroko tree, the wind began to whisper. It carried voices, soft at first, then louder. "Grace! Grace!" The voice grew into a chorus, echoing all around her. She covered her ears, trembling. "Why did you not share, Grace?" the voices asked. "Water is life, and life must be shared." The sound of children's cries mixed with the rush of flowing water, though no water was there. The wind rose and twisted around her, as if mocking her loneliness. Grace fell to her knees, shouting, "I was foolish. I was proud. Forgive me." But the wind only laughed, circling faster, carrying dust into her eyes. She called into a ball, weeping, realizing that even the earth itself remembered her selfishness. The next morning, Grace woke with tears streaming down her face. She cried until the ground beneath her grew wet. She touched her cheeks, shocked at how much water her body still held even when her throat was dry. She bent low, letting her tears fall into the dry riverbed. As her tears sank into the soil, something strange happened. The ground trembled softly, and for the first time in weeks, Grace heard a faint trickle. She pressed her ear to the earth and heard water moving deep below. She cried harder, her sobs echoing through the silent land. "Please, river spirit," she begged. "Forgive me. I will share. I will never hoard again. Take my pride away, just give life back to the land." Her tears continued to flow, and the earth seemed to listen. That night, Grace dreamed again of the river spirit. But this time, he did not appear with anger. He stood tall, his voice calm, his eyes soft like flowing water. "Grace, your pride made you blind. But your tears have spoken what your lips refused. You have learned at last." When Grace awoke, she heard a sound she thought she would never hear again, the rush of water. She ran to the riverbed, and to her amazement, the river was flowing once more, stronger than before. Birds returned, fish swam, and the land began to breathe again. But when Grace bent to drink, the water turned away from her lips, flowing around her hands. She realized the curse still held. The river had returned for the village, but not for her. She fell on her knees, weeping again, but this time with gratitude that at least the land would live. When the villagers returned days later, following the sound of rushing water, they found Grace kneeling by the riverbank, her face wet with tears. Clara rushed to her, holding her daughter close. The villagers looked on, whispering. The elders spoke, "The river has forgiven us, but it has not yet forgiven Grace. She must live with the lesson she has learned. Let her remember that water is life, and life must be shared." Grace bowed her head, saying softly, "I will never forget. From this day, I will carry water for others, even if I cannot drink myself." And so it was. The river flowed again, the farms flourished, and the village thrived. Grace lived the rest of her life in humility, serving the people she had once mocked. And every evening, parents told their children her story. She refused to share water, then the river refused to flow for her. And the lesson remained in Green River for generations: water is life, and life must always be shared.